And we're live, and this is the King Connections podcast. I'm your host, King, and I'm here and joined by my guest, Dr. Kristen Eccleston. How you doing today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for joining me. So my first question I want to begin with, and this is a question that really kind of sets the context, and that's the question that's, what's your spiritual energy number today? And what I mean by that is more like 0 being life sucks, to 10 being life is awesome. Where would you say you kind of fit within that spectrum?
You know what? I think you're catching me on a good day. So I'd have to go with a 9 or a 10 today. And to be fair, I'm not somebody who's always a 9 or 10. I definitely have those low energy days where things are heavy, but today is a 9 or 10. I'm here talking to you. I've had a good day. I've been helping families today. So I can't complain. Everyone that I love is happy and healthy. So things are good right now.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for indulging me with that, because I believe if you're a 9 or 10, we're going to have a great conversation. Hopefully,
Absolutely.
magic can come and miracles can develop from what we're going to get to co-create with this interview.
Absolutely.
And with that being said, though, one thing I noticed about you is that I've watched another one of your interviews, and you must have been a 10 that day too, because you brought the same amount of energy and enthusiasm, and your smile lights up, fills the screen. So I believe, thank you for bringing that energy to this conversation.
Oh, well, thank you. And, I think it's one of those things too, where I'm very passionate about what I do. So I think even if you had caught me on a low level day, the moment I get to start talking about something that I find to be very inspiring and that I'm very passionate about, I think I tend to just switch into this type of mode anyways.
Okay, excellent. Well, that's an excellent segue into my first question for the interview, which is, what do you see as your purpose in life?
That's a great question. When I think about what my purpose in life is, I really think about myself as being somebody who has the potential to spread happiness, joy, self-confidence to other people. I myself have had my fair share of struggles and life challenges. I truly don't think that anybody is without those in life. We definitely have our own spectrums of what those look like. But my purpose in life is really to spread a message that helps others feel good about themselves. That is what I want. And I specifically do that through talking about youth mental health needs, talking about neurodiversity, talking about what we need in the education setting as far as mental health and neurodiversity looks like. But really, I want, ultimately, when I leave this world, I want my mark to have been that I made the impact in people's lives. People can say, that person made me feel better about myself. That person made me feel like I wasn't alone. That person made me feel like I could take on the world, and that if I had ever doubted myself, that person believed in me and showed me how to believe in myself. So ultimately, I hope that's what my purpose is in life, is that somehow, in some way, I find ways to inspire others to see the best in themselves, even if life hadn't been working out the way that they had hoped it would, that they can see my message and that become a turning point for them to really go out and chase after those dreams and goals that will make them happy and feel fulfilled in life.
Excellent, excellent. Love that answer. And I love the passion that you share with that. So my next question is, how would you define a thought leader from your perspective?
I think when you think of thought leaders, to me, those are the people who are kind of at the forefront of ideas, right? Maybe it's an idea that people in the past had dismissed, or maybe it's a new concept, but they're people who have thought about the topic or the idea. They've done the research, they've done their homework on it, they feel passionate about it, and they see it as being something that will make a difference, not just for themselves, but for the world, for society, even if it's a small society, if it's everybody in this world. But they're the thought leader who goes, yes, I believe in that. I believe in that so strongly that I am going to be the person who's leading the charge, who's raising the flag, who's saying, come with me. This is where we need to go. These are the ideas that are going to help us transform together, and hopefully in a positive way. So I really see thought leaders as people who feel very committed to the ideas, to their passions, and they're not afraid to stand up and present them to everyone, even if at times they might be ideas that other people are not so sure about yet. Maybe the thought leaders are people who are sometimes ahead of their time or ahead of their thinking, and it might take time for people to catch up and be in sync with what they're saying, but hopefully it's sparking that idea or that interest of people finally going, huh, I hadn't thought of it that way. That's a new perspective. I got to think more on that. I've got to start transforming my thinking because I hadn't seen the world that way before.
Excellent, excellent. Now, what would you say you're most grateful for?
You know, I'm most grateful for this life that I have been given, and I'm a mother to two wonderful and beautiful children. I have a wonderful job that I'm passionate about. I have a home that I love and I share with my family. I have supportive family members that I love, and it hasn't been without I've seen trauma in my life. I've seen death in my life. I have seen mental health needs in my life. So it hasn't been, just roses and wonderfulness, but I am grateful, even though they're really hard and it's difficult to go through hard times. I'm grateful for the times in my life that have helped me to transform my way of thinking, that have helped me to transform who I am, because ultimately in difficult times, that's when we really learn what we're made of. That's when we start to take those leaps of faith. That's when we really start to take chances. And I'm grateful for those moments because I'm grateful for who I am today. And without those, I wouldn't be who I am. Without my life experiences, without the things that I have gone through, I wouldn't be here talking to you probably. I wouldn't be here with the knowledge and the understanding of just the way the world works, with the way people think, how things are done, if I hadn't gone through those experiences. So I'm grateful for the life that I have led and for the experiences, good and bad, that have come my way. And I'm grateful for the excitement of what could potentially lie in front of me and what I don't know yet to come in my life.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's powerful. One of the things that I'm grateful for, and I wake up every morning and I go through my gratitude moment, because it sets my mind, it conditions my mind for whatever's going to bring my day. And it helps me realize that we get caught up so much in contracts, proposals, getting deals done. But I'm grateful for things like the ability to see, hear, walk, talk, think, and have sound mind, right? Because if any of those things are missing, they will outweigh any other thing that I think is more pressing, like closing this transaction or building this business system or whatever it may be. So thank you for sharing this. I think that's such a wonderful way to connect. So I love connecting with people who have a grateful spirit and see that, right? And I think that's one of the key criteria I look for. So my next question is, what is the mission of Eccleston's Education Consulting?
That's a great question. So I started Eccleston Education Consulting about a year ago. And when I started that was a leap of faith. I had been a classroom teacher since I had come out of college. And that is what I'd known. And I had built myself up. I had gone from being a classroom teacher to being a director to being a creator of programs. And so I had really been building up a career for myself. And it was one of those life moments that had been a difficult life moment. And it kind of put that fork in the road where I had to decide what was I going to do, what were going to be my next steps. And Eccleston Education Consulting kind of became that leap of faith that I took. And with that, I've discovered a lot about myself, and that mission has evolved. That mission has evolved into supporting families, but more than anything else, it is the voice of trying to help students who have been underrepresented, students who have gone overlooked in the past, students with significant mental health needs in the education setting, helping teachers, administrators, policymakers, parents understand what youth mental health looks like, and really helping to support having our youth have a voice, helping those who are in power educationally to understand what our youth needs to be successful, how we need to transform what our education system currently looks like in order to make sure that we are setting our youth up for success. Because I truly feel right now we are working in this outdated operating model that we have not updated in quite some time. And I feel like we've got to start shifting what education looks like. And we've got to start taking into account what today's youth needs and what their needs look like and how things in the world have impacted them, like the pandemic. I mean, mental health for them was definitely significant prior, but it's definitely been exacerbated since. So what are we doing to empower our youth so that when they come out of school, they already feel like they're set up for success? They already have the tools and the confidence they need to take on the world, instead of having to spend the next decade of their 20s building that confidence and finding out who they are and discovering those things that they didn't get in school. And then it's almost like a decade goes by before they finally have that confidence to take on the world. Whereas if we had set them up for success from the beginning, they could have come right out in their early 20s, had that energy, not feel jaded by the systems and procedures, and really have the confidence that they need to start making the transformation that I think we need to see worldwide in just how we communicate, love, and understand one another.
Absolutely. I love that mission. I think it's definitely something that's absolutely needed. I think it's something that I definitely want to support any way I can, continue to get the message out and connect you hopefully to other individuals who want to support that as well. One of the things I look for in individuals, I make connections. I had to define this term. Conscious leader comes up quite a bit within the world I work in. And I had to define, I called myself a conscious leader for years, and I had to sit back and really think, what do I really mean by a conscious leader? And why do I call myself that? So I came up with 8 key characteristics that fit that. I just want to share those with you because one of them is going to lead to my next question.
Please, yeah.
And that is, number one, I believe a conscious leader, and this is my true north that I aspire to be. Not that I say I live it every day, but it keeps me on task. Is to be principle-centered, value-driven, action-oriented, results-focused, growth-minded, a accountability acceptor, servant leader, and then finally have a grateful spirit. So I know in doing my research before I interviewed, you said you understand the science behind the growth mindset. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of want you to kind of expand on what is the science behind the growth mindset.
Absolutely. So when I think of a growth mindset, I also think about Jack Mesereau, who was the theorist behind transformation learning or transformational learning. And I'm a big proponent of that because I'm sure you have had conversations, because I think we have all had conversations. It seems to be a growing trend of you start to talk about a topic, and it can be any topic. I know, sometimes hot topics are religion or politics or whatever. Take any topic and you start to express your views or your opinions, and the other person you're talking to immediately puts up a wall. There's an immediate wall right there. You're wrong. You don't agree with me. It just starts like they start berating you for all the reasons why your opinion can't be valid because it doesn't align with their way of thinking, right? Tell me you haven't had a conversation with somebody like that. I think we all, right?
Yeah.
And then that just kind of perpetuates this cycle of frustration. I mean, I've even had people who have said to me, "Oh, I loved my neighbor until I learned that they felt this way about this political aspect. And now I can't even have a conversation with them and I don't trust them." And I'm like, well, that's horrible. If you had this great relationship with them and you enjoyed hanging out with them and now you feel like you can't trust them because their opinion doesn't align with yours, like that's really saying something. And so having a growth mindset doesn't mean that you are changing your mind. It doesn't mean that you're not tied to your opinions, but what you're allowing is, and hopefully you have personal biases. We all have personal biases, and that's not a dirty or a negative term. We all just have personal biases that have come from our life experiences from day one, from the day we were born. If we remember them, if we don't remember them, we view and see the world and interpret the world through what we have just experienced, because that's what we are using as our context to understand and make sense of the world around us. And as we know, we all have different life experiences, and that's where that growth mindset comes in. So when you're having that conversation with somebody and you're sharing your opinions, what you have to be able to do is, instead of putting up that wall and saying, nope, this is my knowledge level and I'm only going to allow my knowledge level to stay this far, you're going to allow that person to share their opinion. And based off what they're sharing, you're allowing your knowledge level or that growth mindset to start expanding, because that's when you're going, I hadn't thought of it that way before, or that's an interesting perspective, or, I've never had to experience that before, so I hadn't looked at it from that lens before. And so you're keeping an open mind to what the other person is saying and sharing with you as far as why they feel the way they do about their opinions. And that doesn't obligate you to having to change your mind. But you know what? You could change your mind, and it's okay to change your mind. That's the other thing I think people think. It's like, oh, well, if I change my mind, then I'm not sticking to my values. No, what you're doing is you're learning. You're learning something that you didn't previously know, and then you are expanding. That's where that growth comes in. You are transforming your thoughts or how you see something based off knowledge that you didn't currently have. We all don't know what we don't know, right? And you don't know what you don't know. So there's no way of any better way to explain. Like, if you don't know what you don't know, you don't know what you don't know. And so when you're learning more, now you have other pieces to consider that you hadn't previously considered. Now you go, okay, this is a new perspective. So instead of staying here when you have a growth mindset, you're taking information as it comes into you, and you're allowing your mindset and your opinions and your views to expand and expand. Again, it doesn't obligate you to changing your mind, but it's allowing you to now have more factors that you're considering when you're forming opinions, when you're coming up with how you feel about something. You have other people who've had perspectives or life experiences that you haven't had, share those with you, and now you get to allow that to be part of your transformation or your thinking when you're considering things in the future. So instead of having these adversarial conversations with people where you're just trying to berate them into feeling the way that you are or how you see the world, it should be a more of a, okay, I'm taking in your perspective. I'm thinking through what you're saying. This aligns with me, this doesn't align with me, but you're still allowing it to shape and mold your view and your opinion that you previously had, so that you can continue to grow in your knowledge and your understanding of other people's perspectives in the world around you, and not see it as an adversarial thing, but just understanding how other people's perspectives have a place and a part in how we communicate with one another.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Definitely well said.
Thanks.
Now, what do you see? Now, that's an excellent segue to my next question, which is, what's the optimal way for the brain to absorb and translate information?
That's a great question. And there's no one great answer for that, because everyone is an individual. Everybody learns differently. Everybody takes in information differently. And again, a lot of that goes back to those personal biases, right? Of how we've experienced the world, how we've seen the world. Are we trusting of people? Are we not trusting of people? Is some of that trust because of what's happened to us in our lifetime? And then again, just the science of our brain too. A lot of learning is an environmental factor. So has it been what I've seen in my life that has shaped my understanding of the world? Is it how I personally have to be involved in it to have a better understanding? So there isn't one great answer for that. And maybe that's where the complexities do come in, is because we are all individuals. I like to think of everybody's brain as being like its own individualized machine, even though each one of us might have similarities to how we learn. Some people might like to experience things with their hands. Some people want to see it visually. Some people want to hear it. Our brains are all kind of individualized and tailored to who we are as an individual. And so when we're trying to really take in information and we're trying to translate it, it really comes down to who we are, what we've experienced in our life. Those experiences definitely play a role, essentially, and especially from when we were young. How do we trust people? Have we learned not to trust people? Do we take people at their word? Do we not? And again, all based off what our life experiences have led us to. And those really start to transform our brain, because our brain's ultimate goal, regardless of who we are, is survival. And that's kind of going back to just the simple, basic human aspect of our brain. And so we're always interpreting information based off what our life experiences have shown us. And then kind of secondarily, how we're just wired as a learner, and how we see things through our environment. Now that can always change and there is a million different types of learning theories that we could go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole on as far as learning theories go. But when I look at that, there is no one great way to answer it, because we're all so individualized to how we see and interpret the information around us.
Understood. What one decision have you made that has been the most significant or most meaningful in your life?
It's funny, if I have to try and pinpoint that, I have to go back. So in college, I had no idea what I wanted to be. So I ended up studying communications, and I had set myself up to do public relations when I came out of college. And there happened to be this really random chance for me to go back to school immediately when I came out of college to get my master's degree in special education. And again, it was one of those kind of like fork in the road kind of life situations. I was all set up. I could go forward. I had experience. I had interned at the Naval Academy in college. So I really had a nice little resume going as far as setting myself up for public relations. Or I could go back into school, and I'd never been a big school fan, and do special education, which was such a shift from what I had just come out of. And I made the decision to go back into special education, maybe not necessarily knowing exactly what I was getting myself into, but that has been one of the wildest rides in my life. Through my career, I can definitely say I'm one of those people who are blessed enough or lucky enough to have moments in my career where I'm like, why am I going through this? Why am I experiencing this? Why is this happening? And then maybe not right away, but 5 years later, it's like, that's why that happened. Now I have this knowledge base that I wouldn't have had if that hadn't occurred to me. Or I wouldn't be here talking to you right now and feel as passionately as I do about youth mental health needs had I not made that decision to become a special education teacher, and then ultimately led to creating a program for students with mental health needs and seeing firsthand the detriment and the impact and everything that they go through and experience. So when I have to think about one of those critical life moments, that was that moment that I decided, okay, I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to become a special education teacher. And it just seemed like life just snuck up behind me and just kind of dropped that on my plate. And I'm glad that I followed through on it, because it has definitely dictated kind of my personal and professional career ever since I made that decision when I was 22 years old.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I'm a person who, my background, system engineering, I'm a very logical thinker in the context of how I process information. And then I'm also a connector. So I have a methodology and a process for how I go about building relationships with people and establishing new connections. And so with that to say, I laid out my key characteristics before. Are there certain key characteristics you look for when you're either accepting an invitation request or you're saying someone you want to make an invitation request to?
That's a great question. I think honestly, if I answer that, that goes back to what we previously talked about, of having that open mindset. I like to talk to everyone. I do. I like to talk to everyone. Even I love talking to people, obviously, who align with me. It's great to get passionate and us all be on the same page and get each other fired up because we believe in the same ideas and have the same mission. But I also love talking to people who do see the world differently than I do. And I don't get mad. I'm not one of those people who put up that wall, because I'm always looking for that, interesting. Hadn't thought of it that way. And you're never going to get that, as much as, it's energizing to have conversations with like-minded individuals. You don't always get the opportunities for, I hadn't thought of it that way, when you're having conversations that directly align with your thoughts. And so I really love the opportunity of talking with everyone and getting to hear people's stories and their perspectives, because that's all about what life is, right? We're kind of going through life. We're learning different things. We're experiencing different things, and we can't all experience everything. But when we can share it with one another and we can kind of collaborate with one another on what we have gone through, I feel like that's where the magic is. That's when we can start to have a deeper understanding. So to kind of sum up the question that you asked me, I look to talk to everyone. I like talking to everyone. I like having the opportunity to learn other perspectives, other points, and especially ones that I'm like, I hadn't thought of that before. That's never occurred to me, or has that ever been something that has popped into my mind before?
Okay. Excellent. What would be a great
I left things very broad on that answer, but it's the truth. It truly is.
No, I mean, I appreciate it. It's definitely, it sets the context again for my next question, which is, what will be a great connection for you?
I think if I had to think, though, of who would be a great connection for me, it would be people who do see concerns with the way our education system is currently centered and that can mean so many different things. Is it the curriculum that we're giving? Is it the fact that we've gotten away from trade opportunities and for kids to really learn some hands-on skills like shop or home ec that have disappeared? Is it the fact that we've minimized the arts? Is it the fact that we're really driven by standardized testing? And that's a concern because it's really creating this one-size-fits-all learning environment. Are people concerned with the education because we're promoting that college is the only path to success when there's so many different paths to success? Are we concerned about what youth mental health looks like? Are we concerned about what teacher mental health looks like? So I really think in any perspective, people who are just genuinely invested and interested in what our education system looks like, how it's structured, those are people who are great connections to me because I'm always looking for people that I can connect with, who I can kind of share my message with, and hopefully collaboratively we make movement in starting to reshape the education sector, what it looks like, what it feels like, ultimately with the idea of trying to improve upon it so that we have positive student outcomes for the future.
That's a very open but specific answer in the context that you want to be able to connect with folks who are in the educational space and want to bring about making a change in that system. Now, I'm sorry, you going to say?
No, go ahead.
So that kind of brings up a follow-up question to that. Do those individuals have to be educators or
No.
space of being with a PhD, or are you open to folks who might just actually be passionate as a parent? Or
I'm open to somebody who's like, I hated school and it was miserable for me and I barely got through it and I hated it and I feel like, I never would want to do it again. And how do we make it better for people? I'm truly, you don't have to be an educator. You don't have to have a PhD. If you just have experienced school, which would be the mass majority of us, and you have a feeling towards it in any kind of way, I'd want to talk to you about it. If you loved it, tell me why you loved it. Because how do we duplicate that? How do we really harness what you loved about school and make that a priority? If you hated it and it was a miserable experience for you have to get up and go to everything, why? Why did you hate it? What were those components? Was it the way your relationships with teachers looked? Was it the setting or the environment? Tell me those things. All of those things are important to me because those to me are the way that we make improvements and we start to reshape what school looks like.
Thank you for saying that. You're similar to me in the context that, again, my engineering mind is, I look at all this data. And that data is important to really begin to form your thesis or your thoughts. But I would definitely, we can expand more on this offline, but I definitely would like to talk with you about jointly co-creating some focus groups around it.
Absolutely.
We ask questions of those individuals, and I can invite folks from different networks to come in and chime in. So I think what you're saying is definitely a very important topic, and I think that's a wonderful thing to get discussion.
I feel like education is the foundation, right? That's where we're all supposed to start, and then we go out into the world from there, but it's supposed to be what's providing us with our foundation to then go out into the world. And I think that's why I see it as an important factor. And I think that's why I see everybody's input is important because, we don't all go to be teachers after we leave school. We go on, we take so many different roles. So having everybody's perspective on what their school experience was like is important because that's how we're going to set everybody up for that level of success after they're getting that foundation piece.
Absolutely. I completely concur with you on that. So of all the things you've accomplished in your life, what would you say has been the most rewarding?
Oh, I won't go with Obviously, as a mom, I have to say the mom piece, but I feel like that's a little cliche to say. So if I have to say, I will say I'm very proud of myself for having obtained my doctorate. And the reason why, even though that could be cliche too, is I hated school when I was younger, when I was in high school. I did not like school. I struggled through school. I was definitely one of those females who was undiagnosed ADHD, even though you could go through my files and it would red flag how fast I talked. I was constantly daydreaming. If it was a topic I was interested in, I did really, really well. If it was a topic I wasn't interested in, I struggled very much so. But I just did not enjoy school, and I felt really bad about myself in school. There was a lot of having a lack of confidence in myself, who I was as a learner, and I definitely left school thinking I wasn't that smart, and I somehow had tricked people into thinking that I was at least somebody who could make it by. And it wasn't until I got into college and I had the opportunity to learn things that I was interested in that I started to go, okay, maybe I'm a little bit smarter than I had given myself credit for. And then I grew past that. And even when I was getting my master's, I struggled. I can honestly say, and I had the director of my program pull me aside and tell me I should quit. I wouldn't make a very good special education teacher.
Wow.
And that I should quit my master's studies. And I mean, I was already like 2.5 years in, or 1.5 years, I think it was a 2-year program in at this point. And she's telling me this. And thank God I didn't, because I think I'm a pretty good special education teacher. I have great relationships with the students that I taught, and I feel blessed to have had those relationships with students and to have had the opportunities to grow. So I'm glad I didn't listen to her. And even at that time, when I was going through my master's, still didn't know I had ADHD and some of the learning struggles that I did. And I have to say, my doctorate was probably the first program I went through that I did know and I was aware of having ADHD, but I didn't let any of those past factors of not liking school, of having people who hadn't believed in me, I didn't let that stop me. And I struggled too. I don't want to make it seem like it was all roses and easy for me, because I think anybody who's neurodiverse, learning has its own struggles for different reasons for each person. But I was proud of myself because, if anything, I showed myself that I have a level of resiliency and perseverance that maybe not everybody has. And that was meaningful to me. I showed myself that I had it. And I showed myself that no matter what obstacles were in my way, I could overcome them and I could push past them if I had the mindset to do it. And that was important to me, to show myself that I had that in me, especially at the time that I was finishing my doctorate. There were several things going on in my life that I think it would have been very easy for me to just go, it's too much. It's just too much. And I can't, and I didn't. And that's why I'm proud of myself for that, of pushing through and showing myself that I can, when I want it, I will make it happen. And that was important for me to show myself.
And rightly so. I mean, that's an incredible accomplishment.
Thank you.
In context that when you say you were suffering from ADHD and you still achieve your doctorate, it's a lot of things to try to balance in your brain as you're studying and you're working and you're making sacrifices to do the research, but keeping yourself focused on it, right? Mm-hmm. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And the fact you did it with such a higher purpose of, now that you've achieved it, you want to help, you want to serve with it, right? So that to me is, I think, my little plug for right now, as we talk about changing education, I think it should be tied to a person's purpose. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, I was a wayward youth until I read Malcolm X's autobiography. And for me, that for the first time gave me purpose. Mm-hmm. And I changed the whole way I looked at education. It was a paradigm shift. It was like, wow, education is a tool now. And I never thought about it before. Like, it was just, school was just in the way of fun.
Yeah.
Teachers wasn't really engaging. You had, out of 8 classes, you had 1 or 2 teachers that you liked. Other teachers were just there to just, mess your day up, as far as how I looked at it as a kid. But it was when I connected to that purpose that things changed. So I just want to throw that in there. So thank you for sharing that as your most rewarding experience. I think it resonates with me very well in that context.
No, thank you for sharing that.
Now, My next question is, what do you see as some of your, because you have a very positive disposition, at least, like I said, I've seen you on interviews, now you're on this interview, you're smiling, like I said, you're enthusiastic. So are there morning rituals that you go through to kind of put yourself in this mind state?
I think it goes back to I have been in not a positive place before. I've been in a very self-defeating, like, why me? Why is all this? Why this negativity? I've had periods of my life where it felt like it was just one thing after another. If it wasn't, my mother had throat cancer or, the just issues professionally. I mean, it's been moments in my life where it took me to a place where that positivity piece wasn't there. And it was a lot of personal growth. And some of that looked like having to take that moment to start working on myself and doing things that helped me to kind of recenter and ground myself. I found things like float therapy. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that, but you literally kind of go into a dark room full of salt water and you just float, and it allows your mind to just kind of relax and decompress. It's found to be really great with individuals who've suffered from PTSD. I know military has done research on it as well too. So finding little things like that, or walking around. We have a cute little downtown area in the place that I live. And I find on a nice day when it's sunny outside and just walking around kind of aimlessly is something that I enjoy doing, or listening to music. But it had to come back to really starting to find the little joys that I had in my life and understanding myself better. For me, particularly, especially individuals with ADHD, tend to do a lot of masking. And when I say masking, it's kind of trying to hide that there's anything different about yourself. You don't want to stand out in a crowd. You don't want to be seen as being different. And that was especially critical when I was younger. And subconsciously, I was doing that. And I came to a point in my life where I started to realize, like, maybe I don't really understand who I am and what I really enjoy, because I've been so busy trying to mask and chase what everybody else thought I was supposed to be or who I was supposed to be. And it wasn't until maybe 2 years ago that I really started to do kind of that self-discovery of who I was and what my goals were and what my passions are. And those were the things that really started to allow me to kind of have this level of energy and positivity that you're saying. I think it would be really easy to say I wake up every morning and I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, you are wonderful, or you are great. But I don't know that I necessarily do those things, other than when I am having any kind of self-defeating self-talk, in your mind. I do stop it and I say things to myself like, nope, this is, yes, I'm frustrated, or yes, this is a bad moment, but I know I'm bigger than that. I have proved to myself. And that's why I said, like, getting that doctorate was important to me, because I have proved to myself any of those kind of doubts or thoughts that come up. I've taken the actions in my life to now be able to silence them and say to myself, no, you've shown yourself that that's not the truth. You don't need to listen to that. That's noise now. It's clutter. But I also acknowledge my feelings too, instead of getting stuck in what I call like a personal pity party of like, oh, didn't go my way, or I'm sad, or I'm feeling bad. I acknowledge the feeling instead, like, yeah, you know what? It is a crappy day, or that didn't go the way I want. And I do feel kind of bad about it. And I allow myself to acknowledge the feeling, like, yeah, I feel bad. But that doesn't mean that my day is bad. It doesn't mean my life is bad. It doesn't mean that my future is bad. It's just this one moment, this one thing didn't go my way. I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm going to give it the space to feel that way. And then I'm going to move on from it. And I'm going to pick up and I'm going to keep going forward. And those are really the things I do in my life now, more than a specific morning ritual. It's more of how I see the world, or I interpret that self-talk in my mind, and really try to change the narrative from being a negative concept to how can I turn it into a positive or moving forward type of concept or idea.
Okay, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that as well. I was thinking about while you were saying that, how it's important for us to really think about the little things, like you said, walking around aimlessly in town for a moment, and realizing that the only people we're competing with is ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when you win that battle with yourself of that self-doubt, and you accomplish a goal over that, how rewarding that is. And then how that can build resilience into the next challenge that you move forth in your life as well. Right?
Absolutely. And I think that's important. And I think perseverance and resiliency are some of the most important skills that you can have. And that's why bad things stink. They do. They're not fun. I don't think anybody enjoys when negative things are happening in our lives. But when
Right.
you can look at it from the lens of it's building my resiliency, it's showing me what I'm capable of, it's showing me what I can push through. And then also look at it from the lens of if I don't have these moments, then when those great and wonderful things come, I won't have the same level of appreciation for them if I don't have something on the other end of the spectrum to compare it to.
Absolutely. Flowers don't grow unless it's rain.
Yes. Yes.
You know. Now, my next question, I come down to my last two questions, which are my favorite questions of the interview. And it is there a kin connection you would like to meet? And what I mean when I say kin connection, I'm referring to not a play on my name or my company. It's a connection I define a person who has achieved such success in their life, whether it's career, whether it's financial, or whether it's just in life itself, that if you were to connect with this person as a co-creator, not a fan, but a co-creator, you can do something wonderful things together. And so with that being said, and that would help change your life instantaneously, exponentially, right? So with that being said, I've developed a methodology, a process for doing that, where if you do meet this person, the leverage is not here. It's now they meet you eye to eye and they see you as an equal co-creator and a new chapter in their lives as well. So for me, a person like that would be Magic Johnson. He's someone who's achieved a level of success sports-wise, so that's not so much a reason. It's just his character. Every time he walks in the room, his smile is big. It's, people are attracted to it, and so many other people have talked about the impact and influence he had in their lives, right? And I believe him and I can do some great things together. So who would a kin connection be for you?
Oh man, that's a great question. This is gonna sound so cliche, and I apologize, but you know what? I'm gonna say it. I'd love to meet someone like Oprah, someone who could. And here's why, though. But here's why: because she is very invested in mental health.
Yes.
She's been doing a lot of work with, I believe, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have some mental health businesses that they work on, and she has collaborated with them. So I really like her for that aspect, but I also like her energy. She has that high level of energy too. And I think her goal had always been to be transformative in the sense of helping people to feel good about themselves. I mean, think about all the amazing gifts she's given away over the years. So I know, and I recognize how cliche of an answer that was. So I do apologize for that it wasn't more creative, but I think somebody like that who has, when you think Oprah, I don't think anybody can come up with a negative feeling either. That's like the nice thing I like about her too. I challenge somebody to have a negative feeling when they hear the name Oprah, because she is established with somebody who cares and listens and asks hard questions and is lobbying for change and differences and is aligned with some of the passions that I have as well. So she to me would be somebody to align with who is already established, but also has that passion to try to improve humanity through positivity and through really helping and uplifting others instead of bringing people down. It's all through being uplifted.
Absolutely. Well, I don't look at it as being cliche at all, to be honest. That's one of my kin connections. So I have several. Oprah's definitely on my list. And several other people I've asked that question have said Oprah as well. And like you said, it's for obvious reasons. I mean, Oprah is somebody whose presence people are attracted to. I mean, she's transcended race. She's transcended sex. She's transcended to a point of folks want to talk with her, build with her, and just, be around her because, again, she's a person that they associate with positive feelings and love. So no, it's not cliche at all.
Okay, good. Because yes, that ultimately what you just summed up is exactly why I feel that way about her.
Well, we are in alignment with that for sure.
Good.
Now, my last question again is a question I love because I get so great referrals from this, and my listening audience, my feedback I get from them as well, and that is, what book would you say has been the most influential book you've had in your life, and or a book that you might be reading right now that you're saying, well, this is just top of the mind, but it's something I definitely want to share with people as a great book for them to read. What book would you recommend?
Oh, okay. So I have a couple of answers there. So my first one is there's two short stories that have been most meaningful to me in my life. And one is called The Birthmark by Nathaniel Hawthorne. And the other one is called Desiree's Baby by Kate Chopin. And they're short stories. You can find them online. I recommend them. To me, there's some very transforming life lessons that can become out of either one of those stories. But then I'm reading a book currently that I find very interesting, and I grabbed it just so I could show you it. And it's called It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolin. And I love it because it talks about a concept associated with generational trauma. And that has been something that I have been thinking on and very interested in recently. And I like the idea generational trauma doesn't necessarily have to mean that your childhood was awful. You could have had a very loving, very supportive household that you grew up in, but you could still have generational trauma, because what some people don't realize is how people parent oftentimes gets passed through generations. And so even 3 generations ago, if somebody who was a parent at the time was going through very traumatic events or issues or concerns, that very much could have been reflected in their parenting style. And that has been passed down through generations. And that's why even though you had a loving, wonderful home, things still, you could have had a parent with a temper, or the way they handled things, or their lack of patience could have still been very frustrating or upsetting or impactful to you. But it also talks about some scientific factors too, about some really interesting things. There were mice who were exposed to harsh conditions, and then their offspring, even having never been exposed to those conditions, still responded in a negative way when threatened with that type of condition. So it even showed it at like a DNA level, how we can hold on to trauma from generation to generation. So I found it to be a very interesting book. I'm still in the process of finishing it, but if that's a topic that anyone has interest in, I find it to be very interesting, because I feel like it's very telling. Again, some of us have really impactful homes that we grew up in, and we're trying to struggle to understand why our parents may have treated us a certain way. And some of us had really wonderful homes, but we still were left with feelings of feeling maybe inadequate or not good enough, or have perfectionistic tendencies. And I feel like that generation trauma really starts to touch on that and start to explain that it maybe didn't necessarily start with you. This could have been stuff that happened generations ago that your family is still trying to cope with and deal with, and maybe it's up to you to try to start breaking those cycles.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for this wonderful interview. I want to give you a chance, if you want to have any closing thoughts you want to share, as well as any contact information that you want to share with our listening audience as well.
No, I want to thank you for this opportunity to come and speak with you. This was very impactful and meaningful, and I appreciate it. And then, if any of your listeners would either like to continue this conversation with me or follow some of my thoughts or ideas, I can be found on social media, both Instagram and a TikTok at the.neurodiverse.teacher, or at www.EcclestonEducationConsulting.com. They can meet me there. They can ask me questions. If there's a way I can be a support, I support nationwide. I do it through the Weinfeld Education Group. I oversee their social emotional division there. So any way that I can help and support families, I'm always happy to do so.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you for that investment of time and energy. This has been informative, enlightening, and entertaining as well. So thank you for that, for a great Friday.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And listening audience, thank you again for listening to King Connections. Until next time, I wish everyone a blessed and productive day.